What's up, everybody, and welcome to an all-new episode of Casters of Horror. I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane, and this week we're answering the knock at the cabin.
Knock, knock, knock.
Knock.
But first, before we answer that door, we've got a little bit of movie news. I caught you drinking, man. It's my years.
There's also no way I'm going to be able to do that high-pitched voice today. So.
Oh, okay.
Like, nobody knows.
Maybe. But anyway, yeah. Let's see. What do we got first? The new Scream film coming up on Friday, March 10th. But Ghostface, this new installation of the film takes place in New York City. Well, they're saying Ghostface is slowly making his way there. He has been seen in live feeds, like cameras that have been, like live cameras that have been going in cities. He's popped up in California, Colorado, Arizona, San Francisco, and all these different places. But he's just kind of showing up on random street cameras and webcams. So, yeah, if you guys want to follow him across the country, or you have nothing else better to do with your life, you can look at some of those live feeds. But yeah, he's just kind of randomly standing in different places and
nice.
creepy like kind of like those clowns were for a while.
Yeah, I love it when companies do viral like marketing campaigns like that.
Yeah, like
Smile did it, right? They had some people show up at ball games just standing there smiling.
Yeah. Remember when there was that robot that one of those countries sent? It was like going to go all the way across the world and all that. And it was like this really nice, happy robot and everything. And then it got here to the United States and then just got like trashed.
Yeah.
Yeah. America. Woohoo. Yeah. Moving on. More news from the Blumhouse and James Wan Atomic Monster. They just announced this week that they will be working on a film for Dead by Daylight, the video game. Yeah. So now the game includes a lot of iconic horror villains as they chase you around in these games, but they've also got a lot of originals. So my guess is they're going to probably go off the originals more rather than having to spend out all the money for getting all
I wonder what direction they'll go with that. I mean, because well, you're just gonna make a normal slasher out of it. That doesn't seem likely.
More than likely, what they'll probably do is it's going to be a certain group of people who get held captive somewhere and they're having to get away from it. And it's probably going to be, I forgot what the really big villain's name. It's been a while since I've played the game, but I mean, there's enough characters in it that I could see it working. What's funny is this same sort of concept. There was kind of something like it. Rob Zombie did it a while back, a movie called 31. But it was about like these different clowns and stuff like that. But they were trapped in this big warehouse thing and couldn't leave until, they made it past all the killer clowns. But I don't know. It could be interesting. I'm excited to see what they do with that. So, and this, coming on the heels of Five Nights at Freddy's and what was the other one that the games was last week. So I don't know, man. More and more is just coming out of this company. So I expect to see a lot more here in the near future.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all I had this week for movie news. I can do that and you can't. Yeah, see? Look at that. He's just miming at this point.
That's right.
Shane's stuck in a box. He's like, oh, I'll pull it. Yeah, anyway. This week, we have the film by Mr. Shamalan himself. Night Shamalan. But we are talking about the film Knock at the Cabin. This originally was a book called The Cabin at the End of the World, which you read, sir, I believe.
Yes, I have read
And
it. I
you've
loved it.
by
Yep.
Paul Tremblay. And I'll be interested to see your take on it here at the end. But the screenplay was written by M. Night Shyamalan and Steve Desmond. Let's see what else we got on it. That's about it. Anyway, I guess we'll just jump on in. We see at the very, very beginning during the title credits and everything, we see like all these doodles on like drawings on schoolwork and bills and letters and menus and all this sort of stuff. Like somebody's just obsessively drawing and they're
on whatever they can find nearby.
Yeah, it's fairly dark, morbid pictures. One of them even depicting the cabin, but different tragedies basically is what we're seeing being depicted through these drawings.
Lots of death, natural disasters,
lots of the death. Death. So you've got your slightly borderlining strong bad vocals today.
I'm not even doing it intentionally either.
Yeah. So we got the emails, and we do this.
So if you can't tell, if anyone can't tell, I am sick. So
he is
just
he is a sick person.
I am a very sick person,
sick and twisted, and it so much so that it changed his whole background. Anyway, we start off. We see this young girl. Her name's Wen, played by Kristen Cui, I believe. Is how you pronounce her last name. I would state things that she's been in before, but hey, guess what? This is her first.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, she did like a music video before this, but that was about it. She's catching grasshoppers and putting them into like a large jar for observation. So she's a very intuitive girl, very studious. Then we see this large man walking down the path towards her. Oh, and by the way, I did make note of it. She caught a grasshopper off a fern, which we did find out are self-reproducing a couple episodes back. And in almost every episode since then, we've made mention of a fern because it's been in every film since almost. But anyway, a rather large man starts walking towards her down the path. He says he's not from around there, but he's there to be her friend. And that's stranger danger. But his name is Leonard.
She's like, I don't talk to strangers.
I don't talk to strangers. Yeah. And he's like, well, hopefully we can talk and, become good friends and then we won't be strangers.
Yeah.
All the creepy things that a stranger would say.
He really does go through the list of all the things you would tell your child not to talk to a stranger with.
Yeah. And he's like, you want some candy? We find out his name's Leonard. He's played by Dave Bautista, who, of course, was Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in the film Dune, Army of the Dead, and got his career started off in the WWE. We find out that Wen has two dads, which kind of catches Leonard a little off guard at first. Her dad.
I do want to say before we get too far, Dave Bautista absolutely nailed this role.
Oh, he did incredible, and I didn't read the book, but for his even keel, just very calm demeanor throughout all of it, I imagine that's what was really portrayed in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he did it so perfectly. I'm glad that WWE, if that's where you said that's where he originated.
Yeah.
I'm glad they lost him because Hollywood is in a better place because he's in movies now. He is
the guy's
he has just done a phenomenal job in everything I've seen him in, but this one, he really, really nailed this character.
Yeah, I haven't watched that one where like he was a babysitter. I didn't watch that one, but it's one of those things where almost every WWE guy has to go through it. They're like, "Oh, I'm a babysitter."
Yeah. Every decade there has to be one of these like big burly man has to be in
Yeah.
one of those babysitter movies.
Yeah. He was like a bodyguard slash babysitter for like this important girl or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we find out Wen has two dads. Again, like I said, it catches Leonard off guard that she has two dads. Their dads' names are Eric and Andrew. Eric's played by Jonathan Groff, who was in the show Mindhunter. He was on the film Matrix Resurrections. He was the voice of Kristoff in Frozen 1 and 2. And he also played King George in Hamilton. Andrew is played by Ben Eldridge, who was in the show Pennyworth. He played Thomas Wayne. He was also in the film Fleabag and the film Spoiler Alert. Also other things, but I just didn't want to list everything. After this, Leonard looks off into the woods. Wen says, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Nothing."
Yeah.
And so he's like, "So how old are you?" And she says, and her birthday's in a few days. And he goes, "Well, I found a flower on the way here, something pretty. I want to give it to you as a present. Maybe we can play a game with it." And she's like, "Well, how do we play a game with a flower?" And he's like, "Well, we'll pull a petal. And each time we pull a petal, we'll ask each other a question so we get to know each other better until there's no more petals left." So he's like, "So what's your favorite movie?" And she's like, "Kiki's Delivery Service." He's like, "I haven't seen that one." And then she goes, "Why are you here?" And he looks at the woods again.
Yeah.
And he says, "I guess so I can become friends with you and your dad." And then it's his question. He goes, "How did you get that scar on your lip?" And she gets kind of hesitant to say anything. He's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." He goes, "I don't have any visible scars." He goes, "But if you could look inside, you'd see that my heart is broken." And she's like, "Well, why is it broken?" He goes, "Because of what I have to do today." She's like, "What do you have to do?" And he looks over and he sees three more people coming down the pathway. And she's like, "Are those your friends?" And he goes, "I want you to remember, you are my friend. Those are people
Yeah.
I work with. And we're going to have to do some things that I don't like, but they're important. Some would say the most important things. And you and your dads are going to have to make some tough decisions. And I'm sorry for that."
Yeah.
Well, she, at this point, is getting scared. She gets up. She starts heading to the cabin. He's like, when? Your dads aren't going to want to let us in, but they must, or we're going to have to find a way in. So anyway, she runs into the house. She goes in. She finds her dads. And she's like, there's people, and they have weapons and all this. And actually, first off, she says, "There's people, they're all coming up and they want to talk to you and all this, but you can't let them in." They're like, "Jehovah's Witnesses?"
Yeah.
Great. She's like, "No, they have weapons."
Yeah.
And then we hear dunk, dunk,
Yeah.
dunk, the knock at the door.
And these weapons too, like they are
Makeshift. Very
yeah.
makeshift.
Yeah, and it's like they took various like garden tools or other things and just kind of like tied them together.
Yeah. Duct tape, rope, whatever
it's
like
very
a pitchfork with a like a sickle head or a threshing whatever thing on it.
Yeah, they're very weird. They're very like makeshift. That's a good word because they're just it's very bizarre the way they are.
Ronald Weasley has like a big meat tenderizer mallet on one side and like a spike on the other, and I'm like, I have never seen that tool before, but but we'll get to that. Well, not to the tool, but we'll get to, and I'm not calling Ronald Weasley a tool. So we hear the knock at the door, and Leonard says, "Hello, I'm Leonard. Me and my associates have a very important job to do. We are here because we're trying to save a whole bunch of people and would really like your help." So it's just very matter of fact and all that sort of stuff.
And he is like all throughout this, and again, this is how the character was in the book too. He's like very matter of fact, very polite.
Oh yeah,
very like almost soft,
apologetic.
Yeah,
very apologetic for everything. One of the dads tries to call the cops, but the phone line's dead. And then he says, Leonard says, "I'm sorry, but we don't have much time. Can we please talk in person, face to face?" We get this other one of the other four. His name's Redmond. He yells. He's like, "Let us in, or we're gonna bust the door down." You know,
Yeah.
because Ronald Weasley coming unhinged. It's the gingers have no soul thing. Andrew, one of the dads, says, "I have a gun. Don't come in, or I'll shoot." You know. And then Erica's like, "You have a gun?" He's like, "It's in the car, though." And so it's like in the
Yeah.
safe in the car. So the family starts barricading the doors and the windows. The other the four of the group, start making their way out around the house, and trying to break in. They're trying to find a way in. They're
Yeah.
shutting the windows, moving couches, furniture, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, One of them gets in. Eric tries to fight them off. He's telling Andrew to get Wen out and get her to the car. Eric gets hit by Sabrina and taken down. He hits his head, gets a concussion, all the sort. He gets knocked out. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, let's
Yeah.
see.
And Sabrina, like, immediately, because they're tussling,
Yeah.
and yeah, he gets knocked out. She immediately goes
Really?
down and tries to help him.
Yeah,
Right. And
because she doesn't want him to get
let me
hurt.
help. Let me help. I'm a nurse. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Or let me
Um,
help him, because she's talking to the other guy.
yeah. Weasley breaks in, gets the crap kicked out of him by Andrew.
Yeah.
Like, just gets beat to hell.
And if you haven't worked it out, Redmond is played by Rupert Grint.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you didn't actually mention that, but
No, he's played by Rupert Grint.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know Ronald Weasley, it's from Harry
Yeah.
Potter. Harry Potter. So
Very
yeah,
cool. Very cool to see him
yeah,
in
other
something
stuff.
else. Yeah.
He's done a bunch of things. It's
Yeah.
just like he had a TV show for a while too on that Crackle TV or whatever. He was in a few episodes of the ABC Murders. He was in an episode of Cabinet of Curiosity, or Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosity.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that yet.
He played Charlie Cavendish on the TV series Snatch, based off the Guy Ritchie film. Moonwalkers, Super Clyde, some other stuff. He had another show, but I'm not seeing it on here.
Well,
That's
I
kind
know
of
there
weird.
was one, he was supposed to be in an American show,
Yeah.
and then it just, like, it never actually got picked up to series.
In an American show. Sabrina is played by, oh, dang it. Oh, there we go. I had an ad pop up. Nikki Amuka Bird. Let's see. She was in Jupiter Ascending. Coriolanus. The Omen, the Outfit, not the original Omen, but the 2006 remake. Persuasion, and she did some other things as well. Those are some of her bigger roles. Anyway, so now pretty much everybody's in. Then we get Dave Bautista, or Leonard, just boom, busts his way through the basement door. Okay, just fists through the door, reaches in, unlocks it. He's gone down through the cellar,
Yeah.
come up through there. He tells Andrew, "That's enough." You know, basically telling Andrew and Redmond, "No more fighting. We're good." And he's holding Wen. So he's got Wen at this point. So it's like, all right, everybody stop. Next we see Andrew. He's tied to a chair. Oh, wait, no. Next we see Andrew and Eric. Kind of, they're at like their home.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're coming out to Andrew's parents. We're not quite for sure, but almost like they're telling them that they're a couple, or if they've gotten married, or some sort of. Basically, Andrew's parents are not good with them being in a same-sex relationship whatsoever.
Yeah. You can just tell just by the interaction. I mean, they don't actually say
there is no interaction.
No, because Dad just kind of like sits there and like scowls.
Yeah, and Mom's
and Mom tries to have some interaction, but yeah, there's nothing. It's obvious they have a problem with it.
She's like, "You have a very nice place." type thing.
Yeah.
And not much else. And then they had driven 7 hours and spent less than 45 minutes at the
Yeah.
house and all that, and then went back home. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right. um Eric comes to. Him and Andrew are both tied to chairs. Sabrina is patching up his wound on the back of his head. um Leonard's
Yeah.
sweeping up the glass. Basically, they're cleaning up all the mess that they've made.
Yeah.
And they have Wen watching cartoons. Okay, on the floor. Um,
The other lady, Sabrina, is it? Or it's no, not Sabrina. Adrian.
Adrian,
What
she's trying to
is
fix
is
the door.
she's trying to fix the door that one of them busted through. I don't remember who.
Weasley busted
Oh,
through
okay,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Redmond busted
yeah,
through it, and
yeah.
yeah,
I have the hardest time remembering his name
yeah.
out of
It's just funny
everybody.
because like during this whole thing, yeah, they're all just doing like menial tasks and
Yeah.
like and Adrian, trying to fix the door, and she's just like visibly frustrated with it. But it's like, oh, it's just this is a perfectly
Oh yeah.
normal thing they're doing. They're all just here.
Yep. Leonard says, he had turned on the TV for Wen, and he's like, he goes, this is I've never seen this show before, but, it seems very, very interesting. There's a lot of it talks a lot about tolerance and
Yeah.
inclusion and all this and love. And then Andrew's like, what do you know about tolerance and all this? And basically, Andrew is saying that they are being targeted as part of a hate crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leonard tries to assure them they did not know that they were a same-sex couple till they got there. And he's like, oh, so I guess if you say it, we just have to believe you. And then Leonard finally says, can everybody join me in here? It's almost time.
Yeah.
Sabrina gets up in front of everybody. She begins to talk about her life and, things that who she was, who she is and all this sort of stuff and
Yeah.
why she's there, these visions that she'd had and all this sort of stuff. And it led her to this point. Leonard talks. He's second grade teacher, basketball coach, all this. Very proud of
bartender.
Bartender, yeah. And then Redmond jumps in. He's like, well, I guess it's my turn. And he's just very rude. He's like, we've already wasted too much time. He goes, this, why are we going in through all this? And he's like, Leonard's like, hey, calm down. He's like, well, it doesn't have to change. It doesn't change what we have to do,
Yeah.
and he's like, he goes, but if we can build trust with them, then maybe the conversation will be easier.
Yeah. Redmond's like, none of this matters. It doesn't change what we have to do or what they have to do.
Yeah.
Pointing to Andrew,
Eric and
Len.
Yeah. So Eric starts to have questions. He's like, so basically, if you're trying to recruit us or, convert us from being gay, he's like, it's not gonna change anything. And then he starts talking about the room's really bright. Is there any way that they can cover some of the windows or something? Because he's having light sensitivity from the concussion.
Yeah.
So
Redmond actually goes over and tries to fix the curtains or something, or darken the curtains somehow.
Yeah. So then Adrian starts going into her story about how she's a mother. She was a line cook at a restaurant and all this.
She's very panicked too.
Yes.
While she's saying that, she's like really, really like panicked and like on the verge of tears.
Yeah. Very has a lot of anxiety. She seems stressed. She's played by Abby Quinn. She was in the film Landline, Journey is the Destination, Radium Girls, After the Wedding. She was in Torn Hearts by my friend Bria Grant as well, and
nice.
Little Women. So she can kind of is not quite at the end of her story, and Leonard steps in. He shuts off the TV. He's like, forgets the curtains, it's time. And he steps forward and he goes, "The four of us are here to prevent the apocalypse. Whether it stops depends on you three. One of you three must willingly sacrifice yourself to prevent the end of the world. But the the other two have to basically execute you.
Yeah.
But you have to come to an agreement on who's going to die, or else,
Yeah. One
seven,
one of the one of the three
millions
of
will die.
you one of the three of you has to agree to be the sacrifice, and the other two have to be the ones to then kill you.
Carry it out. Yeah.
Once you've come to that agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we haven't done anything wrong. And he goes, I know. You're just the family who's been chosen for this time.
Yeah.
And then Leonard says, we cannot choose. You cannot kill yourselves. The others have to do it. And Andrew says, I would rather watch the world burn 1,000 times over choose one of my family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and then Redmond again jumps in. He's like, "This is a waste of time. They're never going to choose, and
Yep.
I don't blame them."
Yep. And Leonard says, we've all been shown what exactly will happen if you don't choose. We all saw them. Then we were led to each other, and then we were led to you. I believe Sabrina says this to him. Leonard proceeds then to tell him how the end will happen. Basically, it's going to be carried out with these plagues. There'll be big wall of water.
The first thing he says is that like the oceans will rise above the cities and drag everything out to sea.
Yep.
And then a plague will descend upon people, and the people will writhe in agony.
Yep.
And then finally, the sky will crash to the earth, and the earth will be scorched. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the finger of God will scorch the earth.
Yeah.
And then the final one will be that everything will go black, or everything will go dark.
Yeah, and everlasting darkness will descend.
Yeah.
And,
so
and
it's
basically
like, wow.
saying, and then it'll be like that forever. It will never, that everlasting darkness, like literally.
Yeah.
This will be.
And everybody will die off. And if they choose not to do this, then they will be the three who roam the earth in loneliness.
Yeah.
Everybody else will die, and it's like, oh, wow. So the whole time, Andrew's basically mocking Leonard and questioning him, and Eric's kind of trying to reason with him through all this, like make sense of it all.
Well, because Andrew is like, you sound like every doomsday preacher on every street corner, right?
Yeah.
But then Eric notes that like everything about what they're saying is very specific, except the three of us. That's very vague. Like they had no details to give about what they would find when they got to the cabin, basically.
Yeah. Leonard then says, for every no that you give us, we will unleash a plague for the sins of humanity. Will you make a choice? And both Andrew and Eric shake their head. No. The four then proceed to move around the room with their tools. Adrian picks up Wen. They're freaking out like, no, don't take her. And she sets Wen in Andrew's lap.
Like facing him so that she's basically looking away.
Yeah, looking away. Redmond gets on his knees, and he has this white bag, and he's like, I am so scared right now. He's like, you've got to make this decision. And he says, you better not look away. Do not look away from me. You look and you watch. And he puts the bag over his own head, like crying, and he's just freaking out. And then behind him in this mirror, we see this like bright starlight reflection kind of above his head, but it's like in the mirror. And Eric sees this, and he's like, what is that? And it's like super bright, but it looks like it's coming from behind out the window somewhere.
Yeah, it seems like it's a reflection from the light coming in of the window. Yeah, but it's his eyes are very clearly drawn to it, and so he's like he's seeing something.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, then we get Redmond says a part of humanity has been judged. And they're Eric and Andrew are both sitting there going, "This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real." And then we see the weapons right to. We don't see it actually go into his head,
Right.
but we see like blood come down from the
Yeah.
back of his head, or
Basically,
down
you
the
can tell
bag.
that it's Adrian and what's the other lady's name?
Sabrina.
Sabrina. Basically, they both approach him and start just wailing on him.
Yeah.
Right.
Then uh, Leonard gets his axe
Yeah.
and finishes the execution. Um, and then immediately we're in another flashback with Andrew and Eric adopting Wen.
Yeah.
And at this point, they're pretending that they're not married, that they're
Yeah.
not together. Um, to the point where they're like, "Oh yeah, where's Miss?" They're like, "Where's Mrs. So and So?" And he's like, "Oh, she couldn't make it. This is her brother." You
Yeah.
know, and so then we're immediately thrown back into the cabin. Leonard is horrified about what he just had to do. Runs
Yeah.
into the bathroom, or did he go into the kitchen? I don't remember. He goes into one of the and starts throwing up.
Yeah.
They then drag Redmond outside to cover him so he's not in the house. Sabrina's cleaning the blood off the floor, and Leonard comes back in. He turns the TV on, and we get this M. Night Shyamalan cameo in
Yeah.
the infomercial.
Selling an air fryer.
Yep. Then they talk about how an 8.5 magnitude earthquake had hit out in the ocean somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like 70 miles off the coast.
Yeah. There was a tsunami incoming, and Leonard's like, "Here it is. This is the first plague.
He says that we did this.
We did this." Yeah.
Leonard says we did this, and then like Adrian is like standing back, and she's looking horrified, and she's like, "It's really happening."
Yeah.
And like in like shock and confusion, she says this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's that point of like, it's like we could see it, in our visions,
Yeah.
but now it's becoming a reality.
Yeah.
It's like it's actually happening. But what the report's showing is not nearly as bad as what the four had believed or had seen in their visions. They were like, this isn't right. And Eric and Andrew are like, "What? This doesn't prove anything."
Yeah.
Because
basically it's like, oh no, the news report saying like this earthquake caused a tsunami, but we had plenty of warning, so
yeah,
Hawaii has basically been evacuated, and you just see a little bit of flood.
They could get up to higher points and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's breaking news over the top of that news report that a second earthquake was just reported, an 8.6, and it was just off the coast of Oregon, where scientists have believed for years that there would be like the big one. They've always called it. And they're seeing now the vision play out before their eyes. And they're like, let's show coverage. This just came in from, someone's cell phone or something. They had sent it from, and you see like this big 50-foot wall of water or whatever coming in, or 100-foot wall of water coming in and just wiping out a whole beach. And then we're seeing like people floating around in the water, and it's like this cell phone is still taking video. I'm like, oh, it's a Samsung, because they're fairly waterproof. So they shut off the TV, and Leonard says, "Tomorrow you will face this decision again. We told you that this would happen."
Yeah.
And Andrew says, "We already gave you our answer, right, Eric?" And Eric just kind of sits there. He doesn't respond at first.
Yeah.
He's like, "Eric?" He's like, "I need a minute."
Yeah.
Then we get this flashback of them driving up to the cabin, and they're singing this song. together. It's like, I want to put on my boogie shoes, that song.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sing the whole thing due to copyright issues. But we kind of find through this interaction too, and through, what we've already seen, that Andrew is a little bit more impulsive and Eric's maybe a little more analytical
Yeah.
in everything that they do, as far as like conversation that comes up in this too. Next, we're out of the flashback. Sabrina again is attending to Eric's head wound. They're in the bathroom at this point. She has him in another room.
Yeah.
And she starts talking about religion and how she was never really religious and all this sort of stuff. But then she says, you need to trust in something more than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
because she says she's like, I'm not some religious freak. She talks a little bit about it. She's like, I never believed any of it until the vision started.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was like, and how they all had the same visions and how it's all, how they all met each other and all this. And she goes, I want you to know we're on the same side. And he says, no, I'm on my family's side.
Yeah.
They bring Eric back out. Andrew's kind of becoming nervous that Eric might be swayed. He's basically like, hey, whatever they're telling you, they're all lies. Don't believe any of it.
Yeah.
It's like, why would he be concerned about this, type thing. When, during this point, she's kind of being sneaky. She goes down into the basement and out through the cellar door and runs off out into the woods. She's going to try to escape. Leonard goes out to look for her through the woods. He's like, when? And he's looking around and she's trying to hide behind trees and all this sort of stuff. And it doesn't take long, but he catches her. Spoiler alert. He catches her. Again, if you guys haven't watched this film, we forgot to go into that at the beginning. So
Spoilers.
Anyway, spoilers. If you haven't figured that out by now, you're an idiot. Catches her, brings her back in. He goes, I'm afraid the one rule is no one's allowed to leave.
Yeah.
He's like, we're all scared when. And Andrew's like, we've been targeted. He goes, I knew that guy, that Redmond guy. He was the one who attacked me at a bar years ago, and then he went to jail. Because Redmond had mentioned earlier that he had done some time. Yeah. Adrian's like, no, that his name wasn't such and such. It's Redmond. And he's like, check his driver's license. And they're like, no, we know it's not. No matter who people were in the past and everything is irrelevant to where we're at now, type thing. Yeah. They're like, he just used you. And he goes, you guys barely knew each other. And he's like, well, Adrian's like, well, Redmond did mention the cabin first on the message board, and then we all had visions of the cabin, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute, you guys on a message board? And they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And Leonard basically says, we can't question what our purpose is here. And Andrew's like, your scam has flaws. So basically they're like, you guys need to get some rest. We have a big day again tomorrow. So next morning, Adrian has made Wen breakfast. She talks about her kid and, making food, and, when it's all over and everything, she can come to the restaurant and she'll make her anything she wants, basically. Andrew's still trying to break the group down, basically, just like trying to find, some sort of chink in the armor,
Yeah. And it's everything he says makes a lot of sense, right? He's trying to tell them you're suffering from a shared delusion.
Yeah.
Right. And you have like just think about how you found each other and all these things, going on about how they, because his thing is like they knew that, the news report was going to happen. He
Yeah.
mentions that once, before,
Yep.
and like so,
He's like, you keep checking your watch, and he goes, and it's
yeah,
conveniently, it's like, that the time of when the news reports are coming on, and you
yeah,
have all this scheduled, and how do you guys have all that, blah blah blah, and all this, this is all a setup, and all these things. He goes, we knew about, that earthquake happened. The first earthquake happened before you guys even got here.
yeah,
So he's going through all this sort of stuff, and
yeah,
so during all of this, while Andrew's kind of keeping him distracted, Wen hands Eric a knife from the breakfast table, a serrated knife, to cut himself free from the ropes. Adrian says, well, I'm the next one to go. And so she gets up there in front of everybody, and Eric's like, wait a minute, you can just walk away. You don't have to do this. And she goes, I haven't told you guys this, but I have a son. And the hardest part about all these visions, I've watched him die over and over and over.
yeah,
And Eric's
and die horrifically too, because
yeah,
she's like, she saw everything burning,
yeah.
right?
And
And
she was
she's like,
holding him in
including,
her arms.
yeah. So that was like her thing, is she was seeing everything burning, including her son, over and over and over.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Eric's kind of tearing up a little bit at this point, and they're like, please, one of you make the choice, and they're both like, no, we can't.
Yeah, and this is also the point where Andrew is like, stop talking to him, because Adrian was looking at Eric this whole time that she was
Playing off his sympathies. Yeah,
that, and to Andrew, it's like, well, Eric was injured, right? He got a concussion, and so Andrew's feeling like state. Yeah, Andrew feels like they're trying to play on that, so he's like, you talk to me from now on.
Yeah, and Andrew's just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So Leonard says very well, and Adrian kneels down and puts the bag over her head, and they're like, no, don't do this, and she says, a part of humanity has been judged. And then we see outside of the cabin, we hear like these hacking sounds.
I do want to note, even though I won't go into it right now, but this is the point where the movie deviates from the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which we can talk about the book and what happens to the book at the end if you want to, but
yeah, sure.
This is the point where, because like everything up to here was pretty much following right along with it, and so I kind of knew what was coming, and at this point it's a little bit more mysterious to me.
Okay.
So yeah.
So we hear these hacking sounds. We next see Leonard carrying Adrian's body into one of the guest bedrooms. He's like, I'm gonna put her in here so they don't have to see her, and puts her in there. And he comes back out and he says, hundreds of thousands are going to die now. We've unleashed a second plague.
Yeah.
And then Andrew's like, bullshit. And Leonard says, Sabrina, put on the TV, please. And they're talking about this deadly flu of children.
Yeah, some X9 virus, the X9 virus, and it seems to be like specifically targeting children.
And,
and is spreading quickly, but is affecting mostly children.
Yeah,
places are on lockdown and they can't get control of it. So
while this is going on, Eric leans over to Andrew and he goes, Andrew, I think I saw something. And he's like, what? And he goes, a person, or like a figure in the reflection in the light in the mirror behind Redmond. So he's whispering this to him at that point. And he's like, you're obviously delusional type thing. He's like, what? No. And then Andrew's like, this virus has been going on for months now.
Yeah.
You've just been checking your watch all day. He goes, this is all pre-programmed. Yeah. You guys knew when these newscasts would be on. And then all of a sudden, Wen gets up and she starts screaming about wanting to watch cartoons.
Yeah.
When she had handed the knife earlier.
Eric does nod at her.
Yeah.
Right. He gives her a quick nod, and then she gets up and starts screaming.
Because earlier when she handed the knife to Eric, he said, "Remember what we did, or what we did at Thanksgiving when I nod at
Oh,
you? Do that." So basically, it was their way of getting out of things. Was
yeah.
she would throw a fit, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, I guess it's time to go home." So that's what they were gonna do.
Yeah.
So she starts screaming, "I want to watch cartoons! I want to watch cartoons!" And Leonard's trying to go over and be like, "Hey, hey," and Sabrina and Eric finishes cutting the binds from his hands. Uh, he then gets up, and Andrew breaks free after it, and he starts running to the car while they're in there. While he's going to the car, though, Sabrina has grabbed her big tool thing and like just nails him in the legs as he
Yeah.
gets to the car. Andrew gets inside and he's like leaned over the back and he's trying to unlock his safe with his thumb
Yeah.
print. Finally, he gets it unlocked, and then he proceeds to load the shells, the bullets, the
Yeah.
whatever you want to call them, into the clip. And it's taken him forever.
And the
And
whole
I'm just
time,
like,
Sabrina's out there like yelling and like poking him.
yeah, hitting him with the thing and
Yeah.
all this. She's like, "I'm not trying to hurt you. This doesn't need to be this way," and all this. And finally, he gets the gun loaded. Takes forever. I'm like, dude, if you're gonna have it in the safe,
Yeah.
at least have a magazine or a clip loaded so you can just slap that thing in and be ready. Come on. Andrew finally gets it loaded, fires a warning shot towards Sabrina. Sabrina then just runs off out into the woods.
Yeah.
Runs off. Andrew gets out of the car and sees that they've slashed the tires on the vehicle. Leonard says to Eric, he goes, "I believe your family was chosen because of your love for each other. That is why I believe that you were chosen." And Andrew then has Leonard at gunpoint, and he's like, "All right." He's like, "You need to, we're taking over now." And Leonard's like, "You're dooming all of us, Andrew, because it's time for the next sacrifice."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I'm taking my family and leaving." Well, then at this point, Sabrina comes running in the back door, and Andrew just shoots her in the stomach.
Yeah.
She goes down. We get another flashback to Eric telling Andrew that he has a temper. Andrew says that Eric's basically like too uptight. And they're at some bar. And they're talking about like the adoption and all that. Like, will they be good parents and all this? And because of these things and all this. And then some redhead guy comes walking up, telling him to be quiet. Andrew kind of provokes him because he's like, "Oh, it's just because we're gay," type thing,
Yeah.
Of course, and the guy kind of leaves for a second, then comes back and smashes a bottle over Andrew's head. And we're like, we don't get a good look at the guy.
No.
But we're like, oh, is this Redmond? Because this is the story that we had heard earlier.
Yeah.
Next, we see Andrew learning how to fight, like at a boxing gym.
Yeah.
And then he goes and buys a gun because, why not? America. Then we see back at the cabin again, Leonard picks up his axe and has to execute Sabrina. He has to finish her off.
Yeah.
And then he says a part of humanity has been judged. It's like he's not wanting to do it. He picks her up and takes her into the same room where Adrian is somewhat kind of. Andrew goes outside. He gets Redmond's wallet and he's like, "I knew it. It was the guy from the bar." And Leonard's like, "You're wrong about all of us." And so they're like, "You stay in here," and they lock him in the bathroom. And then you hear a window break. guy.
Yeah.
And Andrew's like, oh no, he got out. I was like, duh.
Yeah.
Andrew goes in to check. He opens up the door. You don't see anybody in the bathroom. There's blood on the window. So it looks like he got cut while he, went out. And I'm like, there's no way Batista's shoulders could fit through that hole.
I know. It's like
Um,
it's this like small round,
yeah, it's like a portal.
glass window, right?
Yeah, and there, I'm like, no, there's no way he's going through that.
Which Andrew realizes too. I mean,
So Andrew
like,
is gonna check the shower. Then it's got a cloth shower curtain in front of it, and he just shoots into the shower. And it doesn't look like anybody's in there. And then all of a sudden, Leonard comes jumping out of the shower through the curtain and tackles Andrew, and finally wrestles the gun away from him. And Leonard's got the gun. He's like, turn on the TV, turn it on. You'll see what I've been telling you is true.
Yeah.
And
one of them was like, well, you said you wouldn't kill us. And he's like, I won't, but I will shoot you in the leg to stop you from leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Andrew saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, while they're arguing, Eric turns on the TV. Yeah. And Andrew's like, what are you doing? And we get these news reports of planes falling out of the sky for no reason all over the world.
Yeah.
Like 700 plus.
Yeah.
Planes. And Wen then says, you said it wasn't real to one of the dads.
Yeah.
And then Eric says, sky falling as though there were pieces of glass. And then Leonard says, and God's fingers will scorch the earth and an everlasting darkness will descend over humanity. And then we're starting to see that Eric's now piecing it together.
Yeah.
The news reporter starts talking. He goes, Leonard says, wait, I've seen this part. And then he starts quoting the newscaster as or before she even says the words.
Yeah. Yeah. Word for word. And it's like, like a moment before she says it.
Yeah.
He's quoting the entire thing.
And then Andrew just breaks the TV.
Yeah, he just like throws a chair or something into the TV. I don't even know.
And I'm like, you douchebag.
Yeah, but he's but his thing is like, I don't know how they did it, but clearly, like, he's like, this stuff is all pre-recorded. Clearly, they memorized this and then somehow like pumped the feed into the cabin,
like closed circuit TV type stuff.
Yeah.
Leonard said, the end began before we even got to the cabin. These are not the fireworks. He goes, but small flickering sparks.
Oh, yeah.
And Andrew says, I am taking my family and leaving. And Eric says to Andrew, he goes, do you really think that everything that happened today that we've seen is all just a coincidence? And Andrew says, yes, I have to believe that. And he goes, go ahead.
The thing too with Andrew is like, everything he's saying is right. Like like with the earthquake and the virus all happened before any of this, and news segments are pre-recorded, and it is perfectly plausible that these people just recorded something ahead of time and then had it memorized. I mean, like, nothing he's saying is like him just being,
it's not completely out of left field. Like,
right.
It's
right.
a possibility.
Sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So Leonard says, I know you already don't believe that. Yeah, I can tell when someone's lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew says, Eric, let's get out of here and never come back. Don't listen to Leonard anymore. Leonard says, can we go outside? I'd prefer to do this part elsewhere. And so Leonard's got the gun and he's going outside. Everybody else goes out with him, and he sits down in this rocking chair out on the porch.
Yeah.
And he pulls out a knife.
Yeah, and he has blood like on his in his stomach, so it's unclear like if he actually did get shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right?
it
Because
looked like he got shot when he
yeah,
shot through the thing. Yeah,
yeah. So he just didn't react at all because he's
yeah.
but yeah,
He's
so
Batista.
he's clearly hurting,
Yeah,
so when he sits down in the chair.
yeah. And he pulls out this big knife,
Yeah.
and he says to him, "When I'm gone, you will only have minutes." And Wen looks at him and says, "Will all the children die?" And Andrew says, "Get your headphones. You remember the treehouse that we were playing in? Go to the treehouse. As long as we have us three, that's all that matters." And Leonard pleads with him one last time. He's like, "To save the world, please."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No." Andrew's just like, "No, we're not going to do it."
Yeah.
And then he says, "All of humanity has been judged." And then he slits his throat, sitting there in the chair. And while he's doing that, we see this shot of Eric and Andrew kind of from low angle shooting up towards them. And we
Yeah.
see that the sky is forming storm clouds, getting dark.
Yeah.
Just and then we see this plane falling out of the sky from overhead.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa. And then lightning is like striking in the woods not far from the cabin.
Yeah.
And Eric says, "We still have a few minutes," he said. And he goes, "There was something in the light, a figure." He goes, "And I feel it now." And Andrew says to him finally, he goes, "Okay, I believe you now.
Yeah.
Let's the three of us leave." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What do you mean the three of us leave?" And then,
Well, because earlier in the movie, Andrew was basically like, "It wouldn't matter if this was real." He's like,
yeah, he didn't
I would
care.
let the world burn."
1,000 times. Yeah.
Yeah, but, before making a decision like this.
Yeah.
So now he's like, "Screw it, I believe you, but it doesn't change anything. Let's
Yeah.
go."
And Eric says, "Well, maybe this is the way it's always been. Maybe families have been deciding this all through time."
Yeah.
Then Andrew says, "Well, let's just walk the earth then. Just the
Yeah.
three of us." And Eric says, "Well, what kind of life is that for when? This wasn't a home invasion because they didn't target us. They came here to spend time with us, for us to get to know them, to remind us of all the aspects of humanity." And he goes, "Redmond was malice,
Yeah.
Adrian nurturing, Sabrina healing, and Leonard guidance." He goes, "They're the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I believe we had to see them die and feel their loss."
Yeah.
And then Andrew goes, "But why us?" And Eric says, "Because I know what we felt when we saw Wen for the first time." Which I was like, okay. And I guess it
Yeah.
was just the love that they had or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and they're kind of going back and forth at this point because Andrew's feeling is, screw humanity. They hate us anyway. Why
yeah.
should we save them?
Yeah, in fact, he says that. He goes, "They all hate us.
Yeah.
Humanity's not worth dying for." Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, Eric looks at him and he goes, "I believe them, Eric. I'm not afraid. We have to do this. And do it while I'm thinking about the most beautiful thing, which is, them adopting Wen."
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's almost time. Do it. We're running out of time." And he says, "I'm thinking about our daughter's future and becoming everything that she wants to be. You guys growing old together and her having this life and meeting somebody just like her father met her other father, like her two dads met."
Yeah.
And then we hear bang from outside the cabin. Wen is sitting in the treehouse with her headphones on. It's raining outside. And we see Andrew pop his head up into the bottom of the treehouse, coming up the ladder. And Wen then says, "Did Daddy Eric save everyone?" And then Andrew crawls in to the treehouse with her, and they hug and they start crying together. Then we see the cabin outside of the window. The cabin's burning down
Yep.
as the rain continues. I guess it was hit by lightning.
Yeah. Some of the trees are
Um,
still burning from being hit by
yeah,
lightning. Yeah.
and I'm like, you guys are in a wooden tree house.
I know.
Get out.
Seriously.
Um, so finally they get out. Andrew and Wen are walking, and eventually they come across the truck that the group had been in at some point to get there. They get in, they drive to a diner. While they're there at the diner, everybody's just glued to the TV, like watching what's going on. But we're seeing now that the plagues have all ended. The
Yeah.
last of the planes that were up in the air have all landed safely.
The water
Um,
stopped
the
rising. The
water
plane
stopped. Right.
stopped crashing. Yeah.
Yeah, the sky has cleared up.
The
Um,
lightning, the like sudden outburst of lightning strikes have stopped happening.
yep.
So
There was the sickness. They hadn't had any deaths for the last hour. It was the first time that they've had that in months and all this.
yeah.
And this is the point where Andrew kind of realizes that it was all true and that humanity had been saved by what they had done. Uh, doesn't appear that they ate, but
Yeah.
they get back into the truck. He turns the truck on, and the song comes on the radio that I want to put on my boogie shoes on the radio.
Yeah.
And
Um,
Andrew reaches over and shuts it off.
yeah. Andrew also, before they did that, though, he kind of looked through all the
Oh, the stuff of the
he looked
people.
through all the belongings of the
Yeah.
intruders and basically confirmed everything they told him, who
Yeah.
they were, their family, their jobs.
Yep.
So
The picture, the team had signed this
yeah,
thing for the coach and
yeah,
all that sort of stuff. And so the song comes on, Andrew shuts it off,
yeah,
and he's just kind of sitting there like, I don't think I can handle this. And Wen reaches up and she turns the music back on. And then she kind of sits there like, oh, maybe not. And she turns it back off.
yeah,
And then Andrew looks over at her and then he turns it back on. And then you can kind of see this life has to continue, and
yeah.
we're going, your dad saw you growing up type thing. We got to continue on. And then credits.
Yep.
And then in a M. Night Shyamalan turnaround, it was all a dream. Now there was no Shyamalan-ing that happened.
No,
There was no twist. There was no
um,
weird Shyamalan.
the only thing I can think is if his big twist, because there's no big twist at the end. The only thing I can think is the Shyamalan twist was the deviation from the source material.
Change the whole story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it still is the
Yeah.
same, but it does deviate from the book, and
So-
that's the only thing I can think.
So how does it deviate? Because you said at that one point it kind of
Sure. So yeah, I guess we'll go spoilers for the book. If you don't
Yeah.
want to know the spoilers from the book, I do recommend reading the book. So
yeah, and it shut it off now if you guys don't want to get a spoil, because the rest of this show is just a crap show.
yeah,
Really, from here on out, it's just
I'm not missing much anyway.
It's a flaming
Yeah.
dumpster fire
So
at this point.
So the book deviates when in the movie when Adrian is killed.
Mm-hmm.
I actually I can't remember. I actually think it was supposed to be Sabrina that was going to be killed next, and that's when the dads basically make their escape, and he runs. I guess it's Andrew runs to the vehicle, gets the gun, and I'm pretty sure he shoots Sabrina.
Okay. Right then and there.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that she gets shot there, and then the biggest deviation is at this point. Then Leonard comes and basically wrestles him for the gun, and in the confusion while they're wrestling for the gun, Wen gets shot, and
Oh.
dies.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So Wen's gone in the
Wow.
novel at this point, right? And then Leonard's big thing is like, I don't think that counts because she wasn't a willing sacrifice. So now I think
Yeah.
one of you two still has to kill the other, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And at this point, Adrian then, and I could be wrong about the exact who is who exactly here, but basically the other lady left essentially decides, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore because Andrew and Eric at that point are like, well, screw this. I'm not going to bow to the whims of a god who wouldn't allow Wynn's death to count. You know?
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm pretty sure that Adrian or whoever kills Leonard, lets the guys go, and then goes off into the woods and kills herself. Right? And the guys are basically like, well, are we going to do this? Because they see everything happening around them. And
Okay.
and the other thing to understand too, it's quite a bit more ambiguous in the book, um, about what is actually happening and if this is actually happening. I still kind of feel like maybe it's swinging toward yes, this was all real, but it's not really as clear cut as I'd argue the movie was.
Okay.
And then basically they end the novel with being like, screw it, screw humanity, let's walk the scorched earth together. And that's
Wow.
yeah. So I loved the book, even though the death of Wen was really really hard to get by because
Oh, I would
it
imagine.
came out of nowhere and it really didn't seem necessary.
No.
but 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 I still really liked the book. I will probably get hate for this. I think the movie rewrite was better. I
I
mean,
I I kind of agree.
yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
because that's a
It's quite different.
it's extremely different. I mean,
Yeah,
it changes everything.
yeah,
It changes every bit of it. It
yeah.
changes the self-sacrifice for love. It
Mhm.
changes
Yeah,
the
and they really do because in the movie I feel like Andrew's right. Screw humanity. First of all, I've said this forever. I would let the world burn,
yeah.
before I let something happen to my son if I had the power to stop it.
Yeah.
But like Andrew's right. Screw humanity. Humanity hates them anyway. So
Yeah.
what? Why should they save? And so I think it makes Eric's sacrifice, more poignant. In that, like, well, but our love is pure and true,
Mhm.
and that's why we're going to save humanity.
Yeah.
It reinforces that their love is real.
Yeah.
You
But it
know.
also keeps the other four like this was our purpose
Mm-hmm.
too, rather than just going screw it and just like they've already
Yeah.
come this far. It's like
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, hmm.
I really like this movie, dude. And I'll say, even with
Yeah.
that different ending, I still really like the book.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an acquired taste, and I can see why
I
some
can see
people
so.
wouldn't. you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I
But
really liked this movie a lot.
mhm.
There was nothing about it though that I would have to no, I take that back. I think how short of a time Rupert Grint was in the movie, I think that one kind of shocked me. But
And see,
beyond
the thing
that,
is too, having read the book, I knew that was the case. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh man, sucks for him. But
But what was really weird is I I had this idea going into this movie that I already knew the ending.
oh yeah,
I already knew what the premise was. I already knew that they were the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I mean, and I don't know if this is a matter of because of how much end of the world and conspiracy theory studying and all that sort of stuff that I do anyway
yeah,
played into all of this. but like there was not any part of it that I was just like, oh, that surprised me.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. It was such a
Mhm.
solid story that didn't matter to me.
Yeah. Well,
And
and see, for me, the Four Horsemen thing, it's a nice touch.
yes,
They're nowhere near what the actual Four Horsemen are,
no, no,
but
but
it's still
it's
it's a
yeah,
clever interpretation. So I
analogy
thought,
of it. Yes.
yeah,
And that's what I meant by it. I mean,
yeah,
I know it's not the actual what the four
mhm,
horsemen are described as or anything like it, but there wasn't anything that surprised me about it.
mhm,
I really, really liked the film though. It's a
yeah.
good, solid film. Um, but
It
I
seemed it
I
seemed like a
did
really
not.
quick watch.
Oh, very, very, very quick. In fact,
Yeah,
it was a quick retell too.
yeah,
I mean, we're not far into the show. But uh, I don't see it being horror either, though.
yeah,
Um, uh, now, if the home invasion stuff was a little bit more pressing, then maybe.
mhm,
But the fact is it really, I don't know. I mean, and maybe that was because, and I'm not saying that I read anything about how it ends or knew anything about that. It was just from watching the trailers and watching everything else, I was like, oh, I've already figured this movie out.
yeah.
So I was
No,
like,
I'm actually glad to hear
well,
you say that because I'm like, when I finished watching the movie, I'm like, it didn't feel there was nothing tense about it, right? There were no to me there were like no tense moments in the film, and I'm just like, well, is that because like for the most part, other than the deviations, I know what's coming, but I don't think so. I think that it just maybe it was because these intruders were all very likable. They were
yeah,
all very human, and they didn't want to be there, but they
yeah.
felt they had to be there. I mean, yeah,
I
I
mean,
didn't. And
the
again, we've said before, I don't want to gatekeep horror,
yeah, but
yeah,
I think the biggest amount of tension that really happened in this film was what started happening between Eric and Andrew.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think that was the most intense part of it is kind of seeing this friction come between them.
yeah.
But I don't know. I
I
really
will
liked it.
say,
I
yeah,
actually was considering watching it again.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, not long after I watched it the first time.
yeah.
So
It's just probably one of those that I will rewatch. I really,
yeah,
really enjoyed it. The only thing that I kind of did like better about the book was the ambiguity because you're really not sure. They played on it a little bit with Andrew being like, "No, this is a cult. That you're a death cult," you
yeah,
know. And my mic there, and everything he was saying was legit,
yeah,
right? And so the way the book ended with some semblance of ambiguity, where you really don't know, you can't say for sure which direction was actually true. I do like that about the book, but for an adaptation and for the changes they made, I think it worked really, really well. And yeah, I'm impressed.
I could see how the book would just throw you all over the place. Holy
Yeah, oh
crap!
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh
It was
wow!
definitely one of those where like, and I wondered when I found out they were doing this adaptation, I wondered if they would change, especially like the death of Wen.
Yeah,
I'm like, there's no way. I feel like people would get up and leave the
yeah.
theater.
You're like, when is it happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, when is she dying? Well, let us know what you guys think. Put it down in the comments. Did you guys like it? Did you love it? Did you like the book better if you read the book? Let us know down below. And while you guys are down there, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And yeah. So speaking of films that you like, and I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was
Yep.
great.
I
And
did
and I
too.
hope that some of these films that are coming up on your screen right now will be just as great. These are films that are coming out to theaters or on VOD or streaming service in the next couple months that you can check out. Let us know if there are any of these that you would like to see on our show here in the future. Ta-da! Anyway, we'll go ahead and jump on into this next segment, which we like to call Real Horror Stories. Dun 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 dun. I don't know why I went into
The Price
that
is
theme.
Right.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
Price is Right. Especially if I was doing like Wheel of Fortune and then I went to Price is Right, but whatever. Anyway, this is a little story that I had found. Um, Comes from a young man. He said he was driving cross country with his mom and his sister when he was 16 years old, and his sister was 20. It was late at night, but they were well rested and still alert. They were driving along an interstate and needed gas and a bathroom break, so they stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on a road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car parked at the pump in front of them, with two young men standing still outside of it. When we got there, everything just felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night, but had never been afraid of any of them till then. My mom and sister went inside, and this kid stayed in the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, so they left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the two men had not moved an inch. They were also not talking. They weren't on phones. They were just standing there, still as stone. My sister and mom came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies, just moving their heads. And then we all saw the same thing. They all had eyes dark, black as pitch, and they were empty. They were not reflecting any sort of light or anything. It was just a void. We sped out of there and didn't stop until we were in the next city. And the worst thing about the entire experience is we couldn't find the place on any map, couldn't find it on Google. We knew the exact spot on the interstate to look. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out on that stretch of road and only got confused looks because there was no gas station there. Ooh. If you guys have a real life horror story, write it in. You guys can write it in to castersofhorror@gmail.com or put it down in the comments below. But if you put it down in the comments below, everybody else will read it too. But hey, we might feature it anyway. So, and while you're there, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Lastly, before we end the show, something like we like to do every week, a little bit of pick or pass. Something that we've seen or watched or listened to or, played around with in the last week, horror related, that you guys might be interested in, whether or not you guys should pick it up or pass on it. Shane, I'm going to let you start.
All right. I should talk about games more, so I'm going to talk about a game this week.
Hey, there you go.
This is an indie horror game called, I think it's Lazarette. I'm not sure exactly. This is a demo for this game. That is all that's available for it right now, I think. But basically, it's a first-person horror game where you are part of a rescue crew sent out to a ship that mysteriously vanished 4 years ago and has now mysteriously reappeared.
Mysteriously.
Yes. And once you get on the ship, you start seeing these almost mannequin-like creatures, but then they actually appear to be completely covered in barnacles.
Barnacles.
And that's fine, except for as you move through the quarters of the ship, you might come back upon one that's in a different position or has moved,
Okay.
And there's a mechanic in the game where you can whistle, and if you do that, now and then something might whistle back at you.
Yay!
And so yeah, it's a very creepy especially like you got that ship aesthetic, and so you can hear the ship on the waves, and just as
Creaking
it's
and
creaking, and so yeah, it's a pretty creepy game. I think it's worth checking out. I've played through the demo. I'm interested in checking out the full game. Um, I played this months ago, so for all I know, the full game could be out by now. But yeah, Lazarette. I think it's worth a playthrough.
cool.
Yep.
Very, very cool. Check it out. Check it out. Play around with it. Or stop playing around with it, as my dad used to say. Anyway, mine this week is a pick. I was kind of leery when I went into it because it's not always that you find a great film made by a band. This film is called Studio 666. Yeah! It is a film that was done by the Foo Fighters, but it is a true horror film. The band goes to record their 10th album at a home in California, a big mansion place. And while they're there, they find that the acoustics are amazing because the house is haunted and the devil wants them there to record their album. And a demon actually takes over Dave Grohl. And all hell breaks loose as they are trying to finish the song that Satan wants them to record. But it is hilarious. It is funny. It is actually got some really, really good practical effects in it. There's a bunch of comedians in it as well, and they did a good job at it. Not all the guys in the band can act, but some of the guys did a pretty good job. And Dave, of course, is a complete genius, so he did a great job in it. But yeah, check out Studio 666. It's worth checking out. I was really worried about that one, and rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins, who ended up dying in real life not too long after it was filmed.
Oh, jeez.
And came out. But anyway, yeah, so check it out. Great film. But anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit like and subscribe before we get out of here. Next week, sir, what show or what film are we going to be watching?
All right, next week we are going to be taking a trip to the Outwaters.
The Outwaters.
Yes.
Yes.
I have heard that this... Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. This film was causing people to leave the theaters ill.
Oh. Not quite to the Terrifier 2 extent, right?
Oh, yeah. They're saying, people are they're leaving in the theater, they're leaving the middle of the movie. Not the middle of the movie, but they're leaving the film to go throw up and yeah. I'm like, okay, I've heard this before.
Yeah. I've heard people leaving all sorts of films around here, but that's just because they're like, oh, I can't believe they put those kind of movies around here. And they all just like, yeah.
No.
Yeah. We can't
regardless,
have those kind of movies.
I'm looking forward to the Outwaters. I've watched this one for a while.
So if you guys are going to check it out beforehand and don't want to just be told a story, make sure to check it out on Screambox.
Yep.
If you don't have Screambox, you can find it streaming elsewhere. Anyway, yeah. So stick with us next week. Until then, I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane.
And get the hell out of here. We'll see you guys.
See ya.
Ha 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 ha!